Hello and welcome to my Factorio 1 rocket per minute base tour. So I put about 225 hours into this map and it doesn't quite produce over 1,000 science packs per minute, but it consistently goes close enough to that level that I'm going to call it done. And I did also have to improvise a few extra production things based on some of the updates made while building the base, such as these low density structures. So where I'm starting at now, I'm in my main production area for science packs and the material supplies I'm making. So I made all my engines, turrets, ammo, and solid fuel, all the random components for science packs in one giant box cell. They've not been the best idea, but this is my first attempt at a large mega base, so I've learned a few things if I ever decide to go into a next attempt and make a larger one. And so electricity consumption ranges anywhere from 8 to 14 gigawatts, depending on how many cells are running. And I did want to utilize also, I overbuilt my module production capacity, and I wanted to find a way to make use of it and just see what the base would look like at its true full capacity. So I made this little exchanger here where it puts in tier 3 modules and then pops out science packs. I currently have it deactivated because it does cut into the production of the rest of the base, but I put that in there just to see what would happen. So this is the final endpoint of the base, and I've done it mostly as a I've done it having trains only running out to the outposts, and then once the raw materials get delivered, they all run on internal train networks. So that's the main bit, that's the whole central base here. And then zoomed out, this is my map. So we'll hop in the train and head on over to power production first. We'll start over here since I'm already at this location. This is where I make all the stone and concrete products. So stone comes in, gets smelted. I have iron ore coming in from a patch within the walls of the base. And something I tried out that I'm probably not going to use except for small items next is doing inserter bridges between the logistics networks. They work for low volume items like rocket fuel, but they're not particularly good for mass transfer of large volumes because of how the bots have to fly to the edge of the network and then back, which ends up being inefficient for bot charging. And then we also have, for outpost building, I have a construction train with designated items that normally go for any outpost, plus custom ones I can fill. And then I've also got a resupply train to keep structures and artillery ammo supplied at the outpost, as well as pick up trash. And then I have a separate little train that runs crude oil out to the outpost to keep the flame turrets. So while that goes, just like a typical outpost here, you have I do electric mining with bots, and then have 2 A2 trains running. And then for defense, every power pole length, I have 2 flame turrets and 3 laser turrets, which is good. Prior to the 0.17 update, could hold off any bot fighter attack with almost no damage, but with the change in the spitters, I had to change some of the resupply things because the spitters were actually destroying turrets with their acid plumes. So this is my uranium processing here. Centrifuges come in, and then I have a closed loop system here with the enrichment, fuel production, and nuclear fuel, as well as the reprocessing. And then for power production, I use exclusively nuclear, and I do an 8 reactor setup that does about 1.1 gigawatts, and then over the whole map I have, it looks like, I got 12 of these things, and then I decided just for fun to stick a bunch of pointless reactors in there to see how much uranium the processing setup could handle. And then I have a train to run rocket fuel out to the other portions of the base. So then, also near the uranium processing, I got the oil set up. And you can see here that going through near the oil setup, I use a stacker system and then have multiple stations. And so that way the trains all go to the mines and the stackers, and then once they hit the stacker, they, based on the circuit condition and which stations available, go there. So my oil setup, I didn't entirely make it myself. I took someone else's beacon blueprint setup and then chopped out some of the systems I thought to be redundant. And then for the cracking setup, I have an SR latch hooked up to the tank to make sure it cracks in cycles and the pump isn't constantly switching on and off. And then I did also have a little bit of coal liquefaction set up, but I decommissioned a bunch of the coal liquefaction because it was making a bit too much, more than I needed. And so this train here is running between what I call the transload facility. So for all the coal, iron, and copper, what I did is I have the 2A2 trains coming in, and then they actually offload into the chest here and then transfer to the trains that move it to the rest of the base. Again, wasn't quite sure how that was going to turn out, so I'm probably going to use logistic train network if I build another large base, but it was still an idea I thought would be pretty cool. They come in with the stacker, go over to the offload station, and then they go to the trains carrying it to the internal networks. So they have the coal transload there, and then over here I have the copper transload facility, and then the iron transload facility. Alright, let's see if this is going to take care of it. So I think now I'll head on over towards the iron transload. And so for the rail network, I have everything internal here isolated from the main network, and then there's a large rail going on a perimeter around the base, as well as going out to each of the mining areas. I have, in a radial pattern, 8 different branch lines on double tracks, and then heading towards each individual mine, I do a single track system. And then in the one case I had a single track going to enough mines, I decided to install a passing loop in this segment, but all in all, I don't have train traffic issues on this base. So this is a better view of the iron transload facility here. And currently now the trains are backed up because my demand isn't high enough. So heading over this way, this is one of my plate production here. So each, I've learned now to also split up the cells into smaller pieces, but for example here is my 2 steel producing cells. One steel goes to the rocket, and then the other steel goes to the science pack production area. And so for all the internal networks, the general rule was I made the trains as long as the bot cells, and that way, you know, the trains would be longer, but they'd be running less frequently. So, for example, like in the center here with all these junctions, there would never be any jams, and so far I've never actually had anything deadlock or jam or get held up against itself. So this system seems to work out pretty well. It's quite a bit of fun, though, to when I was constructing this, to do the routing and track overload. Oh, and so one of the other things I did was by isolating all the networks, the vast majority of the internal networks just use 2 station names, pick up and drop. So then, for example, when you go into a train schedule and go to add station, the station list is actually relatively small, and the only items with unique names are most of the mines. So I did that to simplify the logistics of creating train schedules. So over here we have, so this is the basic overview of like production cells. We have an iron transload facility here, and then these are the steel cells. And then down here is an iron plate cell, and then this is another iron plate cell. For example, this iron plate cell is going across an inserter bridge to this green circuit cell, which is then going to my processing unit cell, and then some of the processing units are getting bridged straight over to the rocket area, and then the other two are going on trains, one to the science area and then one to the modules production area. So most of my production cells are all fairly, standardized cut and paste blueprints of furnaces and assembling machines. The only kind of unique setups I have, the circuit setup couldn't follow the same one as the other inserter, the other assembling machine setups. And then for the copper wires for the red circuits, I decided to do something a little interesting. So I did a similar idea to the inserter bridge here, except in this case, the gap is actually being bridged by the assembling machines themselves. So I have a train here bringing in copper plates, and then the copper plates come here, and then the assembling machine sits in the middle of the gap. So then as it goes to the machine, it bridges the gap, instead of having an inserter bridge with chests. So then this advanced circuit setup is going to feed the rocket, the processing units, and the science pack area. And then the lower red circuit area down here goes to the module production area. So then this is an example here where the inserter bridge setup didn't quite work too well, because you can see here I loaded up on roboports to go to the inserter bridge, but these bots are making a significant amount of flight time over here and the charging less efficient. And then for aesthetics, I also decided on the plastic production, because the number of machines I needed was so low, but the petrol throughput was high. I made the train snake around the cell instead of going alongside of it, which seems to work in practical terms and kind of looks cool, but getting the pumps to line up on the setup actually was different, because the way they line up visually, but the actual lineup point, as you can see based on the wagons and the inserters and the pumps, isn't quite what you think it would be given the train position. And I had to improvise a bit with the plastic when the low-density structures were added to the science production. I had to add a couple of rail lines in. So then heading all the way down to the module production area, we have the greens and the reds and the blues coming in, and then I also have the tier 1 modules for the production science packs going on here. And then I have three setups for making tier 3 modules that are currently dormant, but if they're activated, they'll crank up the base power consumption to a steady amount of about 14 gigawatts. And then they'll also it seems like actually at that point the bottleneck is actually petrol from oil processing, so maybe it wasn't a good idea to get rid of the coal liquefaction. But now we're back at the main area, and I guess the only other thing to go into is the rocket. So rocket fuel was a bit tricky with one of the updates, because originally the rocket fuel setup, it didn't need light oil to work, and then when they added in the light oil requirement, it became a bit of a headache to figure out. But then when I actually went to go figure out the design, it was actually quite easy, because I was able to take my existing rocket fuel setup, and all I had to do was rotate the assembling machines, and the way I spaced out the beacons, there were already spaced pipes to go through, so that was actually quite easy. So rocket fuel is one of the items where the throughput's low enough that it's, well, that would have just ruined my video recording. And the throughput is low enough to be met by the inserter. So a lot of the base, some of the far out locations like transload facilities, I had a train running rocket fuel to fuel up the trains going outside the base, but most of the internal trains in the base, there's a network of burner inserters and nuclear fuel being fed across the logistic network boundaries to keep all the trains within the base fuel. And yeah, I guess yeah, biters are actually a constant problem, which is another reason in the next base I'm going to make some changes to my defense and resupply setups. I'll probably use uranium ammo and increase the storage capacity of various resupply items at the outpost, because currently my train does not seem to be able to automatically keep up with biter attack resupplies, and they frequently take out power poles. So a lot of this playthrough, I was constantly responding to biter attacks to keep everything up and running. And there's one other thing to put in. One of the intermediate products I did actually decide to do all in one was the gears and the pipes, because they exclusively require iron plates. I just put those all in a single location. So that's about it for what there is to see in the base. And I have a few new designs planned for future builds that I'll probably do on different maps. I think my computer, my machine is doing okay. Well, right now it's below 30 frames per second, but it's normally running at 40 on this map. So my machine could probably handle a 2 science pack per minute base, and I'll probably figure out how to do use logistic train network and build a much more optimized and efficient base as far as bot networks for a future build. And yeah, I guess that's it.